What's up, my friends? Wow, it's already the new year. I wish you have a great year of 2023. In my last video, I compared the housing supply and demand data across Florida and the whole country, and identified Tampa market's relative position. After that video, many people ask questions such as, would market crash? Or what would be the housing price trend in 2023? Lots of organizations and YouTubers also have tried to predict the housing market. No matter how people predict, they use a thing called predictive model. A predictive model can be an empirical model or statistical model. No matter what types of a model, it uses predictors or what we call influential factors to predict. For example, some people might say, look, the inventory skyrocket, so the price will drop. This is an empirical model. The predictor is housing sales inventory. Some people may say the unemployment rate is historical low. Rate hiking will result in housing price adjustment, but not crash. Predictors are unemployment rate and interest rate. Or people may say the increased rate has cooled down the market so much. If the Fed shrink its balance sheet, the outcome will be devastating. In this case, the predictors are Fed prime rate and balance sheet total asset information. No matter what models used for prediction, we need to know this quote from the famous statistician George Box. All models are wrong, but some are useful. Historically, there are many factors influencing the housing market. Some important ones are population growth, income, employment, interest rate, housing inventory, the Fed's monetary policy, etc. In this video series, I will use Tampa as an example and show you how these factors impacted housing price within the past 30 years. Understand the potential relationship between these factors and housing price. Then I will apply data science and predictive model approach to simulate the potential market scenarios and forecast the potential housing price trend for the year 2023 and 2024. Lots of stuff, so I split the video series into two parts. This is part 1. Let's first dig out insight regarding how these important factors impact the housing price in different historical situations. Have deep understanding of part 1 will help understand the stuff coming up in part 2. So please be patient and watch till the end. I will analyze how the Tampa housing price changed from the aspect of population growth, median household income, Hillsborough County unemployment rate, mortgage rate, inventory, and Fed total asset. One thing I need to call out, these data have different granularities. For example, population data is annual data, unemployment rate is monthly data, and mortgage rate is daily. So before the analysis, I prepared the data and summarized the data into monthly level so that I can have enough data point for analysis and would derive meaningful outcome as well. First, let's take a look at the target variable, the housing price index. The reference point of a housing price index is January 2000. The index is 100%. If the housing price is greater than that of January 2000, then the index is greater than 100%. Vice versa. We can easily tell Tampa housing price index shows an increasing trend in general since the late 80s, but experienced some recessions and drastic changes due to the 2008 crisis. The index significantly hiked in COVID pandemic period and shows slightly decline starting the second half of 2022. Next, we will take a look at the influential factors one by one, overlay the housing price index, and see what we get. Let's take a look at the population growth versus housing price index first. For easy comparison, I convert Hillsborough County population count into population growth index, using the January 2000 as a reference point for calculating the index. Divide each year's population by that of January 2000 to get the index. Then, we can overlay the housing price index curve and population growth index curve on the same chart. And we can compare slope of each curve. The steeper the slope, the faster the increase was. We can have a quick conclusion by looking at this chart. Hillsborough County population and Tampa housing price both demonstrate long-term increasing trend. The population growth helped housing price increase. This makes sense. Generally speaking, to have a healthy and sustainable housing market, an area needs to have a stable population growth and/or inflow migration. But we can also see something else on this chart. Population growth and housing price show different increase speed for different time periods. For example, housing price increased faster than population growth before and after 08 crisis. This indicates that there were other factors impacting housing price during those time frames. Let's also take a look at median household income versus housing price index. Similarly, I convert the Hillsborough County median household income into index and overlay the curve in housing price index curve on the same chart. Similar conclusion here. Increased income helped housing price increase, but the speeds of income increase and housing price increase were different before and after 08 crisis, which implies that other factors boosted housing price in those periods. Now let's explore the relationship between the unemployment rate and housing price index. This chart overlays Hillsborough County unemployment rate curve and housing price index curve. It has two different vertical axes. The left one is for housing price index, and the right one is for unemployment rate. We can see that the unemployment rate skyrocketed in 08 crisis, went beyond 10%, negatively impact the housing price significantly. During that recession, lots of foreclosures and bank-owned properties pop up, reflect on the spike in the housing inventory, as shown by this chart. Subsequently, the supply significantly exceeds demand, resulting in huge price decline. The housing market crashed. The short-term negative effect brought by the prices surpassed the long-term positive effect of population growth. So, the housing price decreased a whole lot in the short term. After the crisis, the inventory kept decreasing, and the interest rate decreased as well, which brought a positive effect on housing price in addition to the population growth and income increase. If we zoom in the curves into the 90s time frame, we can also tell the negative relationship between the unemployment rate and housing price. But the housing market didn't crash that time, so the quantitative effect of unemployment rate on housing price change would be different from that in the 2008 recession. In 2020 COVID pandemic period, the unemployment rate also greatly increased, but the market didn't crash either because of a mortgage forbearance. So, the unemployment rate cannot fully determine whether the market will crash or not. What about housing sales inventory? Let's compare its pattern with housing price index. The definition of inventory is the ratio of active listing count over pending listing count. We can see, in the 08 crisis, inventory increased fast and housing price declined fast. And after COVID started in 2020, inventory rapidly declined and housing price rapidly increased. Very obvious negative relationship. But if we look more carefully, we can also tell that the turning point on the inventory curve and housing price index curve do not overlap. There are some lags between the inventory turning point and housing price turning point. It makes sense, as it takes some time for a property to be sold and the sold price reflected. Another factor can influence housing sales, mortgage rate. This factor has close relationship with Fed control on interest rate. I plot the 30-year term mortgage rate with housing price index on the same chart. At first glance, we can tell overall mortgage rate change and housing price change demonstrate negative relationship, which makes sense. But for different specific time frames, the interest rate effect on housing price seem to be different. For some time frames, housing price and interest rate even change in the same direction simultaneously. In those periods, other factors' effect may be dominating the housing price change. Last but not least, let's take a look at another factor related to Fed, the total asset on Fed's balance sheet. Fed's historical expanding and shrinking its balance sheet are reflected on this data. I plot the total asset curve with housing price index. We can tell that after 08 crisis, it shows similar but not exact same patterns between the total asset changes and housing price index changes. From previous analysis, we understand that other factors may directly impact the housing price during those periods. Based on all of this exploratory analysis, we can summarize that population growth and household income are the major long-term drivers for housing price changes. Unemployment rate, housing sales inventory, interest rate, and Fed action can have short-term impacts on housing price. In particular, unemployment rate and inventory have the most obvious visual impact for short-term, and these factors have inverse relationship with housing price index. The impact from inventory and unemployment rate changes may have some lags. Mortgage rate and housing price show inverse relationship in general, but in certain time frames, The rate and housing price might show the same direction change when there are other factors influence the housing market in the same time. Some friends might be thinking now, what's the quantitative relationship looks like between these factors and housing price? If these factors change X%, how much percent housing price will change? For this, we need to rely on statistical model and use the predictive model algorithm to derive. In the part 2 of this video series, I'll show you a statistical model which captures the important relationship between these factors and housing price index and the corresponding quantitative effect. Then I will use this model to simulate some possible market scenarios in the year of 2023 and 2024 and predict the housing price trend under these scenarios. If you like my video, please don't forget to give a thumbs up and share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you in part 2.